When I was 18, I worked as a nanny for 2 girls across town. They were 6 and 8 years old. I'll call them Lily, 6, and Mia, 8. Lily was the easiest to handle. She was a very quiet child who just liked to draw and watch TV. Mia, on the other hand, was very talkative and often difficult to put to sleep. I had worked for the family for months and was quite close with their single father, Mr. Peterson. Their home was quite simple, a middle-class family's. Mr. Peterson worked as a pilot, so I was always nannying late into the night on weekdays. My college schedule started in the afternoon, so this worked perfectly for my schedule and sleep hours. One night, after playing a video game with Lily, I put Lily to bed, and not long after, Mia. Mia's bedtime was 9 p.m. After putting Mia to bed, I started to tell Lily to change into her pajamas. Lily insisted that I play one more game with her, so I made a deal that she would go straight to bed after we finished playing. However, as we were playing, Mia started crying, calling for me from her room. I stopped the game and went upstairs. When I got in, she said there was someone outside her room. I laughed and patted her cheek, saying, "There's nobody there." But I would leave her door open so she would feel safer. I then asked if that made her feel better, and she nodded. Lily, who was downstairs, annoyedly called for me to come back. So I went back to continue the game. We finished the game without any interruptions. Afterward, Lily went upstairs to get her pajamas on and brush her teeth, while I was alone in the kitchen watching TV. That's when Mia's crying from upstairs came again. I went up to her room again and she was hiding under her blanket. She said the same thing again. I looked at her door, which was closed. I stared at it for a good while, then looked back at Mia and asked, "Why do you think there's someone there?" I asked if she wanted me to check, and she shook her head. I walked closer to the door, and she whispered, "Don't." I didn't take her seriously until I myself heard something outside her door. It was a very clear sound, like there was a person on the other side of the door, quietly knocking. Or something was behind the door. Mia whispered, "Did you hear that?" I turned around and picked Mia up and said we were going to another room. I also grabbed Lily from the bathroom into my room, and then I locked the door. My room and Mia's room had a connecting bathroom. I went into the bathroom and called Mr. Peterson. Then in a quiet voice, asked if it was possible for someone to be in the house, because of the sound that Mia heard and I heard myself. He sounded worried and wanted me to check Mia's door. I stayed on the phone with him as I went back to Mia's room. I found Mia's door was now slightly open, and this confirmed that someone was in the house with us. I told Mr. Peterson, and he panicked, telling me that it was most likely his crazy ex-wife, Sandra, and to get the kids out of the house. I suddenly felt my life was in danger and that his ex-wife would come out of nowhere and attack me. I went to my room and managed to get both kids out of the house. Right after I got out, I heard the front door of the house slam. I peeked into the living room and nobody was there, but the front door was closed. She must have gotten out while she still could. I immediately locked the door and called 911. Mr. Peterson came home early from work and was there when the police came. Without any cameras or any other evidence, there was no proof that it was his ex-wife. His ex-wife was the mother of Lily and Mia, but Mr. Peterson kept her away because of their past that I can't tell for his privacy. Long story short, she couldn't accept that, and Mr. Peterson had recently blocked her number, which could explain her breaking into the house. The police recommended that Mr. Peterson change the door locks. Mr. Peterson understood that I wouldn't feel comfortable staying in the house for a while after that incident. So he started letting the kids stay with relatives or having one of his parents come to watch the kids. I don't know what happened after that, because we rarely kept in touch anymore. I didn't like the fact that he agreed to have me check that room door even though he already suspected it was his ex-wife. It was definitely a terrifying experience. This happened when I was 8 and my younger sister Sophie was 6. I still remember it so clearly, even after all these years. This memory has always been with me. My parents hired a one-time babysitter for the weekend, since they were going on a vacation to Seattle. His name was Daniel. He was a 16-year-old teenager who responded to an ad my mom posted at the public library in Portland, Oregon. He went to Grant High School, the same place my parents went, so I think they felt safer. He was babysitting us for 3 nights, from Thursday to Sunday. Most of the first night was a blur. I only remember being completely absorbed in The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo console in the basement all night, because I was so obsessed. The same thing happened the next day, on Friday. I played for so long that Daniel came down to play with me. He said he also loved the game, so we played together. I remember feeling happy and starting to like him. The next day, my friend Zachary came over and we played soccer in the backyard. Daniel offered to be the referee as he was outside with Sophie. He essentially seemed like a completely normal person. Zachary went home not long after we all had pizza that Daniel ordered. That night before going to sleep, I was reading a comic book in bed when Daniel came in and asked if I wanted to play a game again, and I'm sure I politely declined. He left as expected, but this was not the end of it. I always slept soundly as a kid, but that night, waking up in a completely dark room was definitely strange. I remember turning around after hearing my door close. I looked across the room, toward the door, and as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw Daniel standing in the corner of the room. Before I could process what was happening and scream, I heard him whisper, "I'm here." I didn't respond, but then he slowly approached my bed, pulled the covers, and I swear he was about to get into bed before I screamed, "Don't touch me." He froze. I got out of bed and ran to Sophie's room, grabbed a blanket from under her bed, and lay on the floor, trembling. Throughout the next day, I didn't see Daniel. I knew he was at home because he made Sophie breakfast, but I knew he was now avoiding me. I couldn't call my parents because I didn't know their cell phone number. It was a strange and long day where I just stayed in my room and played with my sister. Daniel never came in once. That night I couldn't sleep. I don't know how much time passed before I heard my door open again. This time I didn't look up. I lay there until I heard Daniel. I heard the door close. Then a moment later, I looked at the door, but he wasn't there this time. I turned on the lights to make sure, but even at 8 years old, I knew he was hiding. I decided to sleep in Sophie's room to protect her. I got up and brought my pillow and blanket to Sophie's room, and sure enough, Daniel was already in the room, by Sophie's bed in the pitch-black room. I screamed at him to get away from my sister, and he told me to calm down. He was just checking. I yelled for him to leave, and he left the room. I knew he was angry because he didn't even look at me for the rest of the weekend. He just focused on an unsuspecting Sophie, whom he fed, played with, and took for a walk to Forest Park. Sophie really liked him, which worried me a lot. On Sunday, my parents came back. They tipped Daniel and he left, without saying a word to me. I never told anyone about this, because at 8 years old I felt confused and scared. I felt that it would be a problem, and Daniel would get into trouble. I was afraid that because of me, he might manage to hurt a child later on. It's unfortunate that this is something I kept bottled up throughout my childhood. In the winter of 2018, when I was 16 years old, I was looking for a part-time job. I wanted to save up money to buy a used car. I often saw my friends with their cars, and I couldn't wait to feel that sense of freedom. My grandmother, who always had connections, introduced me to the Miller family, who needed a babysitter for their 2 sons, Ethan, who was 10, and Noah, who was 5. I went to their house on a very cold day. We spent the time indoors because a thick layer of snow covered the yard. We played video games in the living room and built a huge pillow fort. Ethan, the older one, was quiet but smart, while Noah was very friendly and loved to tell stories. Their parents liked me a lot and immediately asked me to watch the kids the next evening while they went out for a dinner to celebrate their wedding anniversary. The next evening, the snow was falling heavily when I arrived at their house. The atmosphere was quiet and peaceful, with only the sound of the cold wind blowing. Their parents gave me a long list of house rules, and in the corner, a small note I quickly read. Noah often says he hears a tapping on his window at night, but don't worry, it's just his imagination. I tried to ignore it, thinking of it as a typical story from a child who watched too many horror movies. The night went smoothly. We made hot chocolate, watched a movie, and played cards until we were tired. When it was bedtime, Noah seemed restless. He kept holding my hand, not wanting to let go. I don't like it when it's dark, he whispered. I assured him that everything would be okay, helped him lie down, and turned on the small nightlight next to him. Eventually, both kids fell into a deep sleep. I went back to the living room to watch TV, feeling relieved that my job was almost done. Around 10 p.m., I heard a loud scream from Noah's room. My heart immediately started pounding. I rushed in, finding Noah sitting up in his bed, his eyes full of fear. There's that tapping sound on the window again, he whispered, his voice trembling. My heart beat even faster. I turned on the light, but nothing was visible except the snowstorm outside. It's probably just snow hitting the window, I said, trying to calm him down while glancing outside. However, as I was about to leave the room, I heard a clear tapping sound from the window. The sound was so real, not a child's imagination. I froze. The hairs on my neck stood up. I went back to the window, pulled back the curtain, and looked out. But there was no one there. Only heavy, falling snow and darkness covering everything. I realized that Noah wasn't lying. Someone was out there. I felt a rush of adrenaline. With a determined resolve, I opened the window slightly and yelled, "Whoever is out there, I've already called the police. Get away from this house." After I yelled, I heard the sound of footsteps running away, muffled by the snowstorm which made the sound hard to hear. I immediately called the police and the kids' parents. The police arrived in minutes and were not surprised at all. They explained that for weeks, there had been reports of someone bothering windows of houses in the neighborhood. The kids' parents arrived home 15 minutes later. They were shocked, pale, and very sorry for not believing their own son. That night, they returned to the house. I gave their payment back and explained that I couldn't watch their children anymore. To this day, I will never forget that night. The experience taught me that a child's instincts should never be underestimated. Sometimes they see or feel things that we can't understand, and as adults, we must listen to them.